I want to talk about the T app, right? We haven't talked about that in a while. I don't know if I did a, I don't know if I did a video on that or whatever, or episode, whatever you want to call these, like editorial. But in case you're not in the know, there was an app put out, an only women's app. You had to use your photo. You had to do a selfie just to get qualified to have the app and shit. A lot of guys use female friends and family members to get in there, and basically what it was a bunch of women doing what they termed a Yelp type review of men they dated in the area. Right, these things were area specific, and basically it was them shitting all over the men that they had dated, the choices they had made. Further selling what is supposed to be organic and shit. So, a lot of women were in there talking about the men's habits, the cleanliness, uh, whether they were cheap or not and shit, or their STI, whatever STIs they may have had, and some allegations were made. There was egregious slander, you know, and allegations. They called some man the R word or the P word and shit. It was a shit show. It was a shit show, right? I mean, disgusting, right? But to be expected in this modern society that we live in and shit. Okay, and we're living in the decline of Western civilization. I'm just convinced of that, and I'm convinced every fucking day that there's. Well, I don't know what's at the end of the tunnel and shit. Okay, right? I'd like to see a return to things being more organic, more natural and shit, but it's just not to be. And too many of the wrong people are making money off this shit. And the gentleman, or the company responsible, was a guy there. A guy of the alternative faith. He created the app because he said that somebody in his family or his mom had been repeatedly cheated on or something. So he was making something so that women could give each other heads up in the dating world, assuming there will be a dating world in the future and shit, right? We live in the vending machine uh, era of dating and shit, okay? Right? The vending machine, there's no need to, uh, really get to know anyone or meet and greet anything. You can simply swipe left or right, all that bullshit. And I myself, at 56 years of age, I think I've been on like maybe two uh, dates that generated online. All right, one was okay because I had a ton of sex and shit and crossed some shit off my bucket list. To be quite honest, and the other ones were disasters and shit. Not that I didn't try to go on more and shit, but I did this social experiment where I wrote uh, in boorish fashion, okay, in the most toxic masculine fashion. I wrote exactly what I was looking for a woman, mostly physical and shit. I said things that a modern day feminist would deem unrealistic and shit. And I said I was looking for that and shit. And I included two pictures. I included a picture of my fucking face from my uh, identification of a picture of my face and a picture of me in a suit. Well, and that's all I did. It was on Yahoo. All right, well, that Yahoo used to have a dating deal, and within hours of doing that, I didn't expect anything because like I said in other videos, I grew up non-select. Basically, I was told I was ugly as sin and all that bullshit. I assure you, I'm just a regular black guy and shit. Okay, and I'm not hideous. I don't look like the Frankenstein monster or anything. I'm okay. But within hours of me posting my preference, all right, and I didn't say any particular race, right, but mostly sisters, was blowing up my inbox, right, and 70% of that was sisters yelling at me about what I had wrote that I wanted in a woman and shit, as far as the visual presentation and shit. And some psychological things. I didn't want a lot of drama and stuff like that. I can't remember the exact verbiage that I used, but I was getting my shit blowed up and shit. And it was just a social experiment. I didn't intend to go on any date because I didn't feel that you know I didn't feel qualified to be dating like that at the time. I wasn't working a really good job and shit. I was making like 40 grand a year or something and shit. Just scraping up to that. So like it was just a social experiment. It was the same thing women do every day. They looking for validation thing, and I thought about all the times that I had been told I was ugly or fucked with or heckled and shit incessantly by the people in the neighborhood who share my ethnicity growing up and shit. And they went overboard with the shit, violated my human rights a couple of times growing up and shit. I won't go into that. But every fucking, every fucking day, I had like hundreds of these emails just coming in. I would delete them in mass. I started deleting them in mass, but I couldn't bring myself to, you know, fully, just get out of this shit. And I just eventually forgot about that I even had done that. And I was still getting messages in there and shit. And eventually they just took it down. Yahoo got rid of it, that version of it anyway. And that was that. You know, but I had some crazy, I had two interesting ones, and then I was done. Shit, I met a very, very attractive woman who was from a wealthy family, and that's the one I wanted, right? That's the one I wanted, and I was talking to her when I was working graveyard shift at this job, and like some people at my jobs, like found you're stupid, right? I should have been fired, but I actually was on my computer talking to her in like a box, like had a floating box there, and my boss like confronted me the other day. And the woman was so attractive that he was like, "Oh, invite your friend over to to the job and shit. I'll give her a tour of the property." I'm like, "Man, get out of here." And the second one was a sexual bucket list for me, shit, from my teenage years and shit. Okay, and I'll leave it at that. But that's the one I hooked up with. Shit. And you flash forward to the TAB and shit, and they made that women, and one the LGBTQ plus gentleman and shit created an app to shit on men more than they already do and shit. What does that tell you? They created an app to shit on men more than they already do. Hmm. Obviously, there were karmic consequences. The universal law dictates that there will be payback for the shit, blowback if nothing else. And someone hacked the fucking app and shit. Someone hacked the app. They did a number of things that hackers do and shit. They made public the photos, the selfies of the women that were doing the shitting on all these men. The men that were getting brown down on all the men that were unfortunately put in that app and shit. Alright? Unfortunately put in the app. And it's what you would expect. Alright? It's what you would expect. A lot of them are bust downs and shit. They're what I used to be accused of being and shit, non-select. Alright? Surplus women, leftover Christmas cakes in they call them over in the Eastern, in the East, places like Japan and China and all, they call these women leftover women and shit because nobody don't want them. They aged out or they bust downs, and they just don't get it. You can't tell a woman shit, right? They do everything based on emotion and shit. That's what we're supposed to come together. We're logic and their emotion and shit. You put two halves together to make a whole. You're never gonna get it, right? You're never gonna fucking get it. You females are never gonna get it and shit. And look what happened. And like you were exposed to shit. Just if nothing else, just looking at the faces of these motherfuckers. Tell you everything you need to know about anything they told any other women on there and shit. And it's not our job to convince those women whether or not to believe them. Okay, it's your job to live your best life and shit, to save yourself. And it's, my, particular part of the world. I'm just talking to straight black men that are unattached and unencumbered with life's chains and shit. Wife and kids and all that bullshit. All right, a lot of y'all was busted and fucked off. Okay, and it brings me back to that initial social experiment that I performed with Yahoo dating app back in the day. Like back in the day, like the 90s or some shit. Yeah, it brings me back to that. I remember I met with this woman. Woman contacted me via that dating app on there, Yahoo, and she worked for Crunchyroll, right? The anime studio. It was in the early days or whatever, or mid days, whatever fucking days it was. And she had a very interesting you know, she had a very interesting profile, but no picture, you know. So, I just shot her my phone number. We was talking. She had one sexy ass voice, and we were talking back and forth and shit. But I could not get her to commit and go on a date with me. When I really wanted to just go on a date, I wasn't gonna try to run her through or nothing. I really, at that time in my life, I didn't have really a problem getting, women to lay down in my fucking bed and shit. Non-select, right? Fucking nerd, all that. Whatever you want to call me. Just imagine. Whatever you imagine, just say it's me. It probably ain't. But I couldn't get her to come out of her box. I could get her to talk about anything. We had some great conversations, but she wouldn't. I mean, eventually, it all came to a head because I told her in no uncertain terms. I got tired of being coy about it or anything like that, or, dancing around it. I told her that I would like to see her, or at least could she send me a picture or anything. And we went to a back and forth, and she was backpedaling. And I said, look, I like talking to you and everything. I don't care what you look like. Will you please send me the picture? Whether you believe me or not, just send me a picture or something. Give me something to go by. Are you telling the truth, or is everything on your profile real or not? And she was like, yeah, everything's there's real. I said, well, what's the problem? You know? And she just didn't have anything to say and shit. I know she was catfishing me on some level, probably the visual. It really wasn't a catfish because she didn't have a picture that had that weird square with the shadow in it thing, or the silhouette of, it was Yahoo's way of just putting some kind of visual there if the chick didn't include a picture or the person or whatever I should say. Modern times. So we never went on a date, right? And I imagine if there was some sort of TF, this woman would have shit all over me and shit. But she had as far as just talking to her, it was a sister like I'm a black. It was a black woman and shit. I'm a black man and shit. You could tell she was a black woman. She kind of sounded like Angela, a happy version of Angela Bassett, as far as the voice goes. And we'd have conversations and talk about shit, and it never went any further and shit. And I was so disappointed. So I was like, oh fuck this shit. I had the rich chick, you know, and I'm not gonna say what she looked like because some black women will get mad as fuck if I even say what that woman looked like. But I have been sent a number of pictures by that. It was three strikes and you're out as far as I'm concerned. So strike one was the insanely attractive, uh, you know, woman that was rich and her mother owned a company, over in San Francisco. Uh, it was her who had sent me more than enough pictures and some nudes that I didn't even notice for a while and shit until she pointed out that she had sent me a ton of nudes and pictures of her home and shit, all up in that bitch. She was ready for me to go there, but I couldn't go, and I won't tell you why and shit. Then had number two, this catfish, right? And then number three is a bucket list, chick. It was nothing like, the bucket list chick was uh, something I had in the back of my mind since my early days and shit. And I went and visited her in the Northern California and shit. And we had a damn good time and shit, but it was not to be. It was not to go any further than that. And I'm cool with it, you know. And I don't think that woman, the third woman of the three, would have shit on me on a TF. I don't think she would have shit on me. Right? Everything that was wrong with why we couldn't go beyond the situation shit didn't have anything to do with us and shit. There was some things about her appearance that made it almost impossible for us to go out and just date like regular people and shit. And I was in a kind of a dead end job. And, I couldn't get out of my economic deal and shit. Not that she cared or anything, but we were living in. I was living in Southern California. She was living in Northern California. Shit didn't work out. But I don't think any of those three would have shit on me. It's not the culture that we have today, right? It's not the culture that we have today. Everything's about uh, ripping people apart. People getting further and further from one another, unable to connect or relate to one another and shit. And I always say, the devil's a liar and shit. Sometimes I feel like the devil's a, female. Now I want to be, use the misogyny, but I will admit that I am a misogynist anarchist in as far as what I'm actually talking about. How I feel is that, we need a hard reset, right? That nothing's going to change otherwise. It's going into the abyss. But I laugh my motherfucking ass off. I'm so glad that, the things happened with the TF the way they did. And I'm here to tell you today that the TF has been removed from the Apple Store and banned. Okay? It's banned. That it is no more. Go figure, right? Go figure. Maybe there is some Universal consequences for this shit.
The Black Patriarchy. A non-existent group of fictional black male power brokers not discredited, erroneously jailed or outright killed by the minority majority who look the other way as they work tirelessly to shame, oppress, and outright take out the altruistic black female populace of the honorable democratic United States of America. 3K's inset bitches. These evil wealthy members of the black patriarchy are the sole reason for all the ills of the black community, walking, talking, holding down jobs, and doing everything up to and including giving their very lives in service to their baby mamas and baby's motherfucking kids. Their motto that strikes fear into the hearts of black women everywhere: bitches ain't shit but hoes and tricks.